Women Making Waves.
So, Susie, when you left the school or uni or whatever, early on in your life, what plans did you have? And did you end up living a life that was anything like you thought you might? Did you have a grand plan?
Oh, no, I never had a grand plan. I don't think that... No, I don't remember ever discussing it with my mum at the time, because she was a single parent, what my grand plan... I think for mum, she had a plan. Her plan was that I needed to get a job. So after school, I had to go to secretarial college because that was the only way I was... And so the plan was to earn money, to have some sort of independence. But no, never had a plan at school or college. Did you?
I don't think I did. I did used to want to be in the acting world for a while when I was a teenager. So I suppose that was a bit of a plan, but I never... well, I did do that for a bit, but it didn't end up being a lifetime's work or anything. In fact, I have nothing to do with theatre anymore whatsoever. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I wonder, when you think back to when you were 18 and you didn't really know what was ahead of you.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of thing that sometimes we forget for young people in this day and age, that I grew up with, when I did see my father, before I didn't see him, that he used to work for a company for almost 20 years. And it was once you got a job, you stayed in that job.
A job for life.
Yeah, a job for life. But now I seem to think we have we're accepting of a non-linear progression where we can change, we can start one job and then find actually that another job within the company or somewhere else looks a little bit more interesting. That's a nice acceptance. I like that.
I like that as well.
Yeah.
And looking back, I think that's really what I was getting at. Looking back, I think we did think there had to be a plan of sorts, and you had to have, something that, whereas... Although people may still have plans, of course.
Yeah, and no harm in having a plan.
It's not the job for life kind of thing anymore.
Yeah.
You're not kind of starting a job and thinking, right, that's it till I retire. It's not that kind of thing anymore. And I think that's actually quite refreshing and quite exciting.
It is and it isn't. I think in some ways, if you don't have a plan... If you're very relaxed about these things and you want to try different things out, no problem. But if you're worried, there's so many things to think about when you've left 18. Gosh, 18 is such an age, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure I want to be 18 again. I really feel for everyone who's 18.
But when my mother was 18, that was considered quite old. I mean, you were kind of, a grown up and looked like a grown up.
Well, 18 years ago.
My daughter at 18, she didn't look like a grown up, and she was still being a teenager, which is great, Yeah. I wish I could have been more of a teenager, actually.
Me too. I mean, they always say that, don't you? When you get to a certain age, you wish you knew what you know now then when you were 18, because life would be a whole lot different. But then, crikey, that is a very ideal word. But yeah, no plan. I think parents have a plan.
I think there's a danger of that as well with some people, actually. And I think that can be quite dangerous in some respects, because then the child can look back and go, well, you made me do that and I didn't really want to. Oh, why didn't you tell us at the time? Well, I tried to, but you weren't listening.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think now that if you don't have a plan, it doesn't matter. For me, it's more about getting a job and making yourself a little bit more independent, learning how to save, how to find other jobs within. And it's all about, we've interviewed so many women about networking. And that, I think, is a really important aspect that a lot of young people think that it's not necessary. I think it is. I think you need to find out what other people are doing in the world. School's great, but it's not everything. You need to find other places in the world. I mean, the world is such a small place now because you've got the internet.
I know. And the jobs look a lot more interesting and exciting. When you look at, the agendas on universities, the list of things, of courses that they do, they look really, really interesting. I'm not sure they looked as interesting when I was 18 as they do now.
Yeah, that's quite true. But I think maybe when you get to about 25 and 30, I think you have a little bit more confidence to say, actually, I'm not going to do that job. I might go back and doing some studying and do some more. But I think at the moment, this present moment, you need a job. And I think a lot of people find that I know a few young people that the pride kicks in and they ought to be doing this job because they got their degree, so they ought to be doing that job. Well, it doesn't work like that. I think you have to find a job first, and then you have the flexibility to find other jobs that works for you. I don't know. I never had a plan, and
it's important you're enjoying yourself as well.
Yeah.
And I don't mean on a Friday night. I mean enjoying what you do and kind of looking forward to it. There's nothing worse than the Sunday night feeling, is there?
Oh, gosh, you remember that Sunday night feeling? My word, that Sunday before the Monday work. I still remember the Sunday before school, let alone work. It's extraordinary how it stays with you. Yeah. Unless you're very, very rare and absolutely loved school and loved work, which, okay, that's fine too if you do. Gosh, that's fantastic if you do. But oh my goodness, I remember that horrible Sunday night.
I know.
Fantastic Friday night feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, free for a couple of days.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But what would you say to your younger self, Linda, now? If I often ask this question actually to all our interviewees, don't we? But what would you say to your younger self now that you've been through certain stuff and seen certain things?
I would probably say all the things that grown-ups were telling me at the time, like be more confident and be more self-assured. And, people aren't going to bite your head off or, and be just be more confident and, have faith in yourself.
Don't worry about getting it wrong as well.
Yeah,
that's the thing
exactly.
that really, really used to hinder me was if I got it wrong, that's the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's never the end of the world.
I know.
Never.
I'm still a little bit like that, actually. I don't like making mistakes.
No, that's true. But learning that if you make a mistake, just accept it and then find something else.
Yeah, and apologise.
To make it better.
Yeah.
And and not put your head in the sand. I mean, I used to put my head in the sand all the time thinking, I've got it wrong, I'm no good. I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Just making sure, as you say, be more confident. Be more confident and don't be afraid of trying something. Don't be afraid.
Exactly.
It's a really interesting topic that I'm sure gets discussed a lot in school as well as at work.
But they won't be listening because we didn't, did we?
No.
They won't be listening.
No. Yeah.
Because you don't really believe it at the time. It's from now to the end of the day, which seems an eternity away.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get older, the week is, just flies by. I can't believe the rate it flies by.
Our next guest has something quite interesting. She seems quite confident, doesn't she? Dr. Eleanor Drage.
And she didn't seem to have the big plan at the beginning either.
She did not.
Which is what made me start thinking about all of this. To begin with, Susie, I think her career path has been a very interesting one.
You're listening to Women Making Waves radio show and podcast, brought to you by Susie Thorpe and Linda Ness. This show is all about women doing extraordinary things.
We welcome Dr. Eleanor Drage, who is a Cambridge Research Fellow at the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence, shaking up AI ethics with a feminist and anti-racist lens. She's tackled thorny issues for major tech firms, written books like An Experience of the Impossible, and co-hosts the Good Robot podcast, digging into what makes technology truly good and whether that's even possible. Welcome, Dr. Eleanor Drage, to Women Making Waves.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
So what I really want to start off with is, do you think we have reached good technology for women, feminists, so far?
There is a lot that's great. I think that, you might expect me to say, no, we haven't, because that is the correct answer. We're never going to get it's not a question of all technology being great for women. I did my PhD in utopian studies at the University of Bologna, and the one thing I learned about utopia is that it's not a blueprint. It's not Thomas More's 15th century utopia stranded in the middle of a geographical nowhere, not attached to real life. Utopia is method. Yeah. And Raffaele Baccolini, this great writer on utopia, says that it's something that you're constantly in the process of working towards, and it's about process, how you do it, how you go about it. And there's so much evidence of incredible processes of making technology great everywhere. There are incredible low resource scenarios now for developing technology. For example, I met some fantastic folk in Berlin that are decentralizing the power of data centers by looking into democratic governance of data centers. So at the moment, data centers, which are super important in the AI infrastructure, are mainly run and operated by big tech companies, which is obviously crap because they dictate how the energy is used, and they're super energy intensive. They put real stress on the supply chain, on the energy grid, on your local water reservoirs. And it's mostly people in the US that are complaining about this because there's 5,000 data centers in the US and only 500 in the UK. Although if Starmer's action plan goes ahead, there will be many more, and this will be a real concern for everybody. But anyway, there are these fantastic people in Berlin, and also working with Dutch municipalities on how we can decentralize control of data centers so that we could have people working in local government and citizens also in charge of saying how they want their energy in their area to be used, which is really cool, and also shows us actually how little we know about energy in our local area and how invested we should be in what's going on in our local energy grid. So I think also as people get more involved and AI becomes more decentralized, as in it's created more in our households or in our local areas and our communities, and this will happen, then we'll also start to know more about what AI is and how it works. Because at the moment, it's so far away from us. It's being made in Silicon Valley or, elsewhere. And we don't know about machine learning. We don't know about computers anymore. It's something that in recent history, women knew a lot about computers and were the computers building the, Ferranti Mark 1 and Bletchley Park. And that will happen again because it has to happen. We need to be able to understand the systems that we're using and also where the energy is coming from.
I'm interested, Eleanor, in this idea about decentralizing the power of data centers. Are we kind of thinking then about every computer maybe allocating some resource to sharing and working together to make it a big kind of supercomputer, almost by kind of sharing across lots of different computers? Or are you thinking that data centers will just need to be built in a different way?
I think the way that people are trying to deal with a data center problem at the moment is just saying who has the decision-making power over where they're built, for a start, and where the energy is going. IBM or Google can hire bits of data centers, or they can own them. And maybe we want the energy to be going towards different AI companies, smaller ones, or ones that are creating systems for schools or for healthcare or whatever. And people could decide, should Google own this half or should another company own this half? And I think, maybe your question was very ambitious. Should they be built in a different way? I think those are the secondary questions. And once we actually understand what a data center is and where they are, because often we don't even know where they are because they're hidden on Google Maps. You have to look very carefully and you can see a kind of concrete flat thing. And, once we answer those basic questions, then we can decide, what if the energy was created and stored elsewhere? I think if you're interested in sustainability, there's some interesting conversations about, putting data centers next to wind farms so that the energy doesn't have to travel so far to get there. and that's good for sustainability. So there's lots of kind of answers to that question.
Yeah, I've heard of that happening actually, where there is one of these crates, really, full of servers sitting right next to a wind farm and getting the power from the wind farm. I thought that was a great idea. Sitting in the middle of a field somewhere, probably not quite as secure maybe as a great big data center, the ones that we're used to using, where it's really hard to get in. I mean, you just do not get allowed access unless they know you're coming. But of course, that's not a separate thing altogether.
Well, no, I think that access question is really important because algorithms are proprietary, as in you're not allowed to see them, they're copyrighted. Systems are not open source, a lot of them, so you can't get in, they can't be audited, people don't know what's going on, there's no transparency. iPhones are unhackable, I mean, you literally cannot open them. So we have this whole problem with the impenetrability of technology. Like, we can't get in, we can't see it, we're not allowed into the data center. I had a friend who's a landscape gardener, and she was doing a garden for a data center, which was a really odd project. But, she had all the security clearance and it's unacceptable. There's it's something that's all over society. We must have access. We must be able to understand what's going on. And even engineers complain themselves that they don't understand systems because they've been built by somebody who's left the company. And, they're not maintained very well. So at every level, people can't really see what's going on. And that's a really huge problem.
So on that note then, Eleanor, because you want to make it safer. So once we do have the entry into all this information, are you trying to tackle it being a safer place? Because what worries me is that we get to know where everything is, and then it's just another ball game, isn't it? We are then having to, when the internet came in, we were worried about safe access for children and teenagers. And is that something you're very careful about?
Safety is one of those things that is, first of all, it means something quite specific in AI. So Trump changed the AI Safety Institute into the AI Security Institute. And this is one of those things that, unless you're paying real attention, you might not have noticed. But safety sort of went out the window. Safety defined in a very technical way, not as you and I might define safety.
Right.
But as kind of benchmarks and evaluation processes and all this. And, there's lots of people who look into that, and it's important. But to me, this is more a question of, what kinds of systems do we want? What is a good life with AI? And questions that normal people can answer. And, safety, security, whatever it is, are often backtracking. They're often doing that retrofitting work of trying to make a bad system with bad people making bad deep fakes and harmful systems for kids, putting controls on them. And that's only half the battle. Really, we should be having people say, what kinds of systems do we want for kids? And being able to build those kinds of things, rather than being forced to use different products that are a bit crap and just having a few safeguards on them. Yeah, so I'd love to see people more involved citizens, more involved in creating their own products, rather than having to use other stuff that's not great.
You're involved in a project called the Desirable Digitization Project, which you've been working on since 2022. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's such a horrible name. I'm sorry. Not even I can get that right most of the time. What do we do? We do loads of stuff. We see AI not as just one single system, like ChatGPT, but as the sum of its parts. So we see AI as the journalists who are reporting on it, what they're saying about it, whether they're reporting responsibly. We see it as whether there's good regulation, like we're working on the EU AI Act, which actually is quite good given all the corporate lobbying. But we're trying to define it in a feminist way and say, okay, the EU AI Act, this big bit of European Union legislation, talks about consent and redress. But what does it mean by that? And actually, what does redress mean if you've been harmed by an AI system? How can you go about seeking help and getting your money back, but also your life back, and having justice. So we work with lots of different stakeholders, whether they're civil society, the amazing busy people at Amnesty Tech, making sure that our police force aren't going crazy and using AI for terrible things like detecting whether crowds of protesters are going to turn violent, which is impossible. And we debunk a lot of these, bad science systems that don't do what they say on the tin. We do very varied work, which is really nice. And I work with a lot of teachers, asking them, like, what kinds of AI systems do you want in your schools? And what does the student experience look like in 10, 20 years' time? Talking to students themselves and saying, how are you using AI? And, what do you think that the university at Cambridge should be doing about, using AI in exams and in classwork? So talking to everyone in all levels of society, because I really don't think that solving AI issues is about a bunch of computer scientists stuck in a room making decisions on behalf of everybody else.
And do you think people understand the problem properly? That's half the battle as well. You can speak to 5 different people and get 5 different answers as to what AI means to them and what it does and what it's going to be used for. And I think everyone's quite confused about it, apart from ChatGPT, which is a bit of fun if you want it to be. But, how do we use it in the workplace? How do we use it at home? That's a big question, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and even if you're asking teachers, should AI be used in your classrooms, they'll all give you different answers, and they'll all give you excellent answers. I love teachers. They're so considered. They have so much empirical evidence working with students about where AI is and isn't useful. And depending on whether you're a history teacher or a maths teacher or a physics teacher, you'll have a totally different idea of what's good and what's not. At Cambridge, I think they use, God, I hope I won't get in trouble, but I think there's one head of physics examinations that uses AI to check the physics questions because the students are so excellent. And so when there's a problem with one of the questions, they'll go up to him at the end of the exam and say, the question was wrong, which is classic at Cambridge. They won't be like, I couldn't get it. They'll be like, because it was the question.
That's great.
You wouldn't have an English teacher using AI to set an exam question at a university level. Our English teachers are incredible and beautiful writers and amazing thinkers. So they wouldn't want to pawn that level of creativity off, I think. You have some teachers that think that, AI is really helpful for marking, and marking is a pain for loads of teachers. You've got others that really think that marking is useful to get a kind of an idea of how their students are doing. So it's very case by case, and ultimately it's about choice and giving people the opportunity to say what they think and to use it or not, depending on whether it's right for the task at hand. So I believe in many answers.
Eleanor, can we just tap into how you came into this? What was it like, family life, growing up? Were you within a family of lots of interested technology when you grew up, or was this something that you brought back into the family? How did it go with you?
Oh gosh, it's difficult to say that now. With my mother had on her phone the biggest font possible. It takes 20 minutes to, instead of sending me a Facebook message back in the day, she'd write me a message, but on YouTube underneath the video that she'd been watching, because she couldn't tell the difference between the different apps. So you'd have some, Tina Turner video with a message underneath, comment underneath saying, "Hi, Eleanor, lovely to hear from you yesterday." You think, oh my God. But she was a skipper, and she was one of the first women to be a big boat navigator, and terribly dyslexic, really can't write anything, letters, whatever, but loves knowing how things work, and did all the plumbing in the house. And my dad is the opposite. He's a very serious lawyer who claims to have been cool working in the music industry 20 years ago, but nobody believes him.
Love it. Oh, it's great. So what path did you follow then to where you are now? Where did it all begin with you? What ignited you, your inspiration?
None. And I can't even say that I've really had a career. I did a talk at a bank recently, and it was women who've aced the start of their career or something. And I said, I totally hadn't, because I left university. Well, my parents wanted me to be a lawyer, and I bailed on law school the day before I was supposed to start. Cried, got on a plane to go to Australia to visit a boyfriend, which was a really unpopular decision. And sort of had a breakdown all the way until I was flying over India and thought, oh my God, I might actually be able to do something else. And I'd have been a terrible lawyer. I have I'm not a perfectionist, I've realized at all. I went to start working for a tech company in those incubators. It's really, you're with about 11 different companies, you're filling in doodle polls. And I thought, oh my God, this is what I got a first for. Like, what am I doing? And then stuff at TransferWise, which is a peer-to-peer money transfer company, where I spent too much time in the company sauna and got fired.
That's a great story. Brilliant.
So, by sheer luck.
And then what happened after that?
I applied for a job at the UN that I didn't get, and something else that I thought was UN, and actually it was a European-funded PhD project looking into how cultures of gender equality are created. And there's about 15 of us researchers across Europe, paid for by the EU. And my PhD was in science fiction written by women writers from 1666 to 2016. And I loved it. And it was completely random and bonkers. And I thought that, that would be the end of my life. And I'd never be able to get a job with that, because what could you do? And then I applied for this job at Cambridge, where there was a whole centre dedicated to interesting work. And actually, my boss, the director of LCFI, Stephen Kay, specialises in the narratives around AI, the stories we tell about AI in the media or in cinema, which is exactly what I did, because I looked at stories we tell about technology and science fiction and how that relates to who we think we are as humans. So don't despair.
I know. I think young people think if they haven't got a good idea and a clear path, that, it's all going to go to hell in a handcart. And that's just not true, is it? Sometimes things just fall into place if you let them, if you just kind of take the plunge and say yes to things and take on jobs. And sometimes you just look at that job, studying science fiction written by women, just sounded absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, there's so many incredible stories that we don't tell. And I actually had a job where I was giving a talk to a bunch of amazing women, including one of the heads of Lucasfilm, the studios that made Star Wars, imploring her to invest in science fiction books written by women as amazing ways of imagining what AI could be otherwise. If it wasn't just machine learning and data centers, what if it was something else, a different kind of configuration of materials and ideas about intelligence that we used for completely different things and interacted with in different ways? What if we didn't see AI as a different species, but as something that was very human and very much tied into spirituality or other kinds of mystical traditions? Why do we have to see science in the West as being so bland when in many science fiction books it's not like that at all?
So then it goes back to what you've just picked up, that science is far more exciting than we paint it in school. But how do we get more girls in school to become much more excited about science and AI and technology?
What do people usually say when you ask them this?
To be honest, they just say, we're working on it. We're working on trying to change that. And that's something I don't think school has quite got it. I could be wrong. I have been out of school life, as in my children, for about 10 years. I don't know if it's changed, but I just get the impression that girls aren't interested. I hope that has changed. But do you get that feeling as well?
Well, I think the problem isn't schools, because they don't exist in a vacuum. There's all these other things in society that are telling young people what they should and shouldn't be interested in. It's not just that science has become a non-emotional subject. And actually, if you look at the history of scientific study, and Lorraine Deston has an amazing book called Objectivity, she argues that it's very emotional. Even the emotion of not wanting to put yourself inside your scientific work and stepping back and saying, I'm studying the world, I'm observing the world, I'm not implicated in it. The rational man, that is a very emotional art, and there is a lot of passion involved. So all these things that we may not have noticed about science, not just that it's about maths, sort of you have a mathsy brain or not, that's only part of it. Also how it's conducted, science doesn't have to be in a lab, it can be conducted in the world and integrated into politics and the other things we know about the world. So if we teach science in a more ideas-based way, it's not just going to appeal to people who want to add or are also interested in literature and ideas and culture. It's a shame that we've shaped science that way. But, I think that too much pressure and emphasis is put on schools and the school system. And lots of teachers do a great job of being encouraging to different people. It's also the world needs to change. So the things that girls are interested in, the things that are imposed on them as being important. And also, I'm sure you'll remember this, was it called the Scully effect? The Gillian Anderson.
Oh yes,
Mulder and Scully. Yeah.
Was that it? It was Gillian Anderson and the X-Files, and was she was proven to have increased the uptake of female scientists who went into STEM, and cited her as one of the reasons that they did so. We do need more representation of really excellent, cool scientists doing amazing, interesting stuff. And it's such a boring thing, representation, but it's so funny that it made such a big difference. There's a paper that we published, me, Stephen Cantor, and my colleague Kerry, about representations of AI engineers in popular films. And we found that in the real world, there's 18% of AI engineers are female, which isn't great. But in Hollywood, that drops to 9% in films. So it shows that this is the systematic erasure of women in AI engineering positions by Hollywood. They continually show us this really dull portraits of AI engineers as weird guys in the basement making sex bots, like that guy from Ex Machina, or Johnny Depp as an extremely unconvincing AI genius in Transcendence. It was an enormous flop. So I don't know why they continue to make films like that.
Talking earlier about representations of women in the AI world and digital world, you yourself represent this, don't you? You do a lot of talks and you have your own podcast as well. Do you feel that's been a very important aspect for you?
I just love, as you probably do, meeting people that are doing incredible things. Like Jess Wade, who I've been writing about in my book recently, is a physicist who's trying to put more women in science on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is mostly written by white men and mostly pages about white men, about their interests in battleships or the Roman Empire or whatever, which means that, things that we consider notable are going to be mostly that. And now, and a lot of the companies I work with use Wikipedia as a data set, which makes sense because actually it is a really great site and it's edited extremely well. But it's not representative of life in any way, shape, or form. But people who dedicate their lives to, and that's not just about putting women, writing articles about them on Wikipedia. It means nominating them for awards, doing all the things that Wikipedia needs in order to name somebody as notable. And it means going into the world and doing slow work, really slow, incremental work. And the people that do that day in and day out, I think, are so much more incredible than Elon Musk and, Sam Altman.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about what you were saying earlier about, representation on films. And I was thinking of Roswell, New Mexico. I don't know if you've seen that Netflix show, which is probably for teenagers. And I have watched all of it because I got really into it. But actually, they have a woman who's an incredible scientist in it. And I thought that was really, really, really cool. She's quite young. She's vivacious, really attractive. She's, but a genius, an absolute genius. And there's nothing she can't do, by the way. I would really like to have her around because there's just nothing she can't work out and nothing she can't fix. She's bringing people back from the dead virtually. So, That's a really good example. And I guess it is aimed at younger people, that particular show about, aliens, really.
That's next on my Netflix list.
You'll love it. You will love it, Eleanor.
You've been working, Eleanor, with Sandy Toksvig, haven't you? Talking about Wikipedia. You've been creating Wikipedia for women. Has that finished? Has that just begun? Or how did that go?
Oh yeah, that's where I was going with that. Thanks for picking that up. Yeah, so Sandy got in touch a while ago because she had talked to Jimmy Wales, the started Wikipedia, and he said, actually Wikipedia is not fixable. And I think that makes what Jess Wade is doing all the more cool, because a lot of this stuff is not fixable, and fixing things is just a small part of the solution. As I said before, the utopia is getting together, community writing, working together, training editors. So it's about that work of leaning in, I guess, sort of trying to reform a bad system. But it's also about this other work of starting again. I guess, to me, Sandy's project is quite abolitionist. It's like, okay, buy Wikipedia, see you later. Let's start a different thing. Let's start from the ground up and put together what she wants is an interactive, global, it's a bit more kind of 3D, and you can look at different countries and find important information that's useful for policymakers about the successes and challenges that women face across the world. So that would be working with people who are already doing data collection on femicide, for example, in Latin America, who are doing that incredible work of cutting out newspaper clippings of women who die and putting those into data sets that don't exist because governments downplay those figures. But it's also about, chatting to people who are excavating cool stories about women in engineering or women in anything. I discovered recently that my great-great-great-aunt had invented the recyclable nappy however many years ago. Stories that going into the world. So what Sandy wants to do is do a kind of antiques roadshow across the country and get people to come without artifacts, not with your silverware from your house, but with stories about people in their family who have women who have not had their story told, and get those to go online. And how amazing would that be for schools and for young people to come and write those stories? And I think her thing is storytelling, and she does it so well. So that's really the cost of the project.
Yeah. Looking at your website, how many projects are you actually doing at any one time? Because it looks like you're doing dozens at the same time.
But this is my lack of career, isn't it? It's me kind of not being able to decide what I like to do. I'm so interested in, in other people and trying to raise up the stuff that they're doing. My colleague Tom runs this AI journalism project, and I love talking to these, incredible journalists who write amazingly well on AI. They're able to pick out the key information, know who their target audience is, know how to strike the balance between making people aware of a problem without fear-mongering, providing the right information, and giving people a sense of what they should be doing. So to be able to support them is fantastic too. I've been working with The Citizens, who are a group of investigative journalists run by Carol Cadwallader, looking into how the Met Police are using AI to track and monitor protests in the UK. And again, working with incredible investigative journalists who are willing to issue 100 freedom of information requests to the Met Police, asking about which technologies they were using in their policing and surveillance systems, and knowing that they were all going to come back saying, piss off, because unlike in the US, which bizarrely is slightly more democratic, because if you ask an institution what tech they're using, they have to tell you. In the UK, they don't. So finding these little pockets of authoritarianism and getting a fuller picture of why things could go so wrong and sort of are going wrong underneath the surface, just because we're not allowed to ask the questions, has been weirdly insightful. So I love that investigative work because it's collaborative. I can't get the full picture myself as a researcher sitting in my office at Cambridge. I need to be working with the other people who are looking at the problem in a different way.
Do you see yourself as being quite disruptive?
Me? Never.
Oh, we were hoping you to say yes.
I was told by Mark Crowley, who's quite senior in the Met Police, that I was the girl who liked turning computers off. And I found that actually sort of deeply sad, because not only do I love my computer, and if he saw how I clung to my phone, I'm sure he wouldn't say that. But, the problem with critique is that it always falls on deaf ears unless people are in a position where they're interested. And I think, one of the reasons I wouldn't go back to working with the police in a hurry, the Met Police, that I've got lots of colleagues who work with the police in Scotland and have, really great collaborations there, is that they have so many problems of their own. They're plagued by political dramas and internal divisions and lack of funding, lack of public trust, all these things. You're basically coming in and sort of pointing your finger at something else for them to be worried about. And they desperately want the technology they use to solve all their problems and be the silver bullet solution that can wipe away any smears on public trust by being totally objective and totally neutral. So if you come in and say, hey, tech isn't neutral and objective, it's political and it picks a side, and they say, well, we don't think that's true, well, what are you going to do? Absolutely nothing. And at a time when, the police are saying to themselves, okay, we have to be impartial. We're not going to bend the knee. We're not going to dance with pride protesters. We have to remain, like one of those emojis with that sort of flat smile. That may be impartiality to them, but it's cruelty to a lot of other people.
You mentioned earlier about criticism and falling on deaf ears. Deaf ears because basically maybe funding is not there. Do you think that there's a whole, I think America invests in technology far more than Europe does and the UK. And I know that that's something that you'll want to have a think about. But do you think funding in the UK should be paramount? If you're saying that we should decentralize and we should be looking in and really creating AI that works for us, surely the funding is quite essential.
It is. I think that we do our best, but our funding structures aren't as good as they are in the US. And we aren't as, the classics of US optimism, like, yeah, go get it, go try it. We don't have that in the same way. So there's a lot more psychological barriers, I think, to starting new projects. The one thing I would complain about is that UK universities take a really big cut of founders' company. So I think, Oxford could take as much as 20%, in shares of, which is absurd. And, Stanford will only take 2-3%. So they'll spread their investments much more widely across the board. And it works very well for them. But, in the UK, we like to cling on, universities who really cling on to companies, which is really oppressive for founders. They work night and day, really hard, and the whole thing is owned by somebody else, which is not okay. And it also means that the good ideas, all the amazing ideas out there, loads of people are not incentivized to push them out.
What's next for you, Eleanor, do you think? Have you anything in the pipeline that you think is particularly interesting that you want to try next?
Oh, I'm not a 5-year plan person. I'm very day by day. I have to say, I'd love to do more. I'm really enjoying the media work. I think it's a really nice contrast to sitting in the room. I love to sit in the room. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I really am an academic at heart. There's nothing I like more than just plodding away at some chapter very slowly and talking to no one and growling about it for 3 days. But, there's a nice combination of silence and slowness, which is the beautiful bit of academia, right? You just get to sit with an idea and now get pinged up by an email every 20 seconds, which sort of destroys it. And then going out in the world and doing things, and then loving the kind of like the radio and TV things because they're terrifying. And actually, I probably need the cortisol and the dopamine.
I just I just love the way you have zigzagged and just picked up things that really interest you and really focused on that. I think there's obviously, you're very interested and you have a connection with all the things you work with as well. And the gender part to me is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I find it a struggle anyway when we talk about gender studies to most people. We think that, do we need it? Of course we need it. It's something like that. But let's go on to the Good Robot. How are you enjoying that? How is the podcast going for you?
It's going great. We began as this fledgling feminist technology podcast, and we like to joke that we're the most successful feminist tech podcast in the world because we're the only one. But we began during COVID when all the people we admire were stuck at home eating cornflakes in their kitchens. And so, we contacted these amazing philosophers. We have all their books on our shelves and expected them not to reply. And of course, they weren't doing anything. They were desperate for somebody to ask them anything. And we'd interview, amazing people who had their Labradors sort of floating around in the background. And it's sort of like that. You get to see another side of somebody, and someone you think is a bit terrifying, or an idea that you didn't really understand when I read the book, and you get them to explain it to you in an easy way and under the guise of being simple for a public audience, right? When actually it's just for me because I didn't really get what they said.
That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we define feminism very expansively, and that's also very important to me, that it's not that we're like labeling things feminist, but what we're trying to say is, okay, feminism has come up with all these incredible ideas and theories, and the idea of decentralization and the redistribution of power, all that stuff can be seen in work that doesn't necessarily brand itself as feminist. So I've been interviewing some people who work on frugal AI, as I call it, which is AI that is not high tech. It doesn't necessarily connect to the internet. It's made for people who live in places, as most of the world do, where they don't have loads of bandwidth or access to very heavy compute power, and asking their universities to, there's a really cool microscope by OpenFlexion, and it's not AI, but it has some AI applications. And it's made of 3D printed plastic bits. It's open source, so anyone in the world can fix it if it breaks. You don't have to send it back and pay a warranty like Apple Care or whatever, and £200. You can fix it yourself there, and all this. And the university where it was being made didn't want to hand over the IP. This is another classic thing about inventions within universities in the UK. They wanted to cling onto it. And so these guys were like, well, actually, the whole point of this technology is that it's open access and the IP is open, so anyone can use it. And we want other people to make money from it. We want people in Africa to use it as medical technologies and make their own companies from it. We want to redistribute by allowing other people access to this stuff. So to me, it's a feminist endeavor, and it's also a bit scary sometimes saying, like, how does this, in your view, relate to feminism? Because you're asking people to think about feminism when they might never have.
That's true.
But that's nice. I'm enjoying bringing people into feminism as well as taking feminism out into the world in different directions.
Well, I think we should leave it on that. I think that was fantastic. Dr. Eleanor Drage, that was so enjoyable listening to you, very enlightening. And
fascinating. And giving us lots to think about.
Absolutely lots to think about. Thank you very much for coming on to Women Making Waves.
Thanks for having me.
You're listening to Women Making Waves radio show and podcast, brought to you by Susie Thorpe and Linda Ness. This show is all about women doing extraordinary things.
That's all we have time for today on Women Making Waves. Our thanks go to our guest, Dr. Eleanor Drage.
If you've enjoyed our feature today, you might want to listen to our conversation with CEO of Herethical AI, Dr. Tamara Palanya, who talks about how she came to the world of machine learning and AI in policing. and talks of our interest in devising systems which detect victim blaming.
We're always on the lookout to feature women living extraordinary lives, so please do contact us if you know of someone we should be talking to.
You can contact us via social media on X and Facebook at WomenMW or on Instagram at Women Making Waves.
You can also find us on cambridge.radio or visit our website womenmakingwaves.co.uk, where you can hear all of our interviews.